You're listening to Crushing Club Marketing, a podcast for progressive club leaders ready to increase their club's revenue. Time for change begins right now. For years, clubs have been led, governed, and managed by its board of governors, leaving the general manager with little authority beyond managing a budget and fielding member complaints. Today, more clubs are operating like businesses and moving to a CEO-led model, giving the GM latitude to lead and manage without board interference. In this episode, we talk to Dave Porter, CEO and GM of Greystone Golf and Country Club. Dave shares with us the story of his club's transformation and what it means to the club and his team. Well, thanks for listening. You know, I've been in and around private clubs for many years, and one thing that's always amazed me is how we expect general managers to run multi-million-dollar operations with their hands basically tied behind their backs. You think about it. In what other industry do we have committees of volunteers, often with no hospitality or business management experience, making operational decisions? In essence, in the club industry, we have the customers running the business. The traditional club model where board members and committees are deeply involved in day-to-day operations was born in a different era. And back at that time, clubs were truly member-owned and operated social institutions. But today's clubs are really pretty sophisticated businesses with a lot of customer satisfaction issues, member satisfaction challenges. They have complex operations, large staffs, and significant budgets with a good amount of competition out there. So before we get into this, in full disclosure, Dave's club is a client of ours as a storyteller, but what I didn't know in working with Dave in conversations in the past is that Dave had led a transformation of his club away from the traditional committees and board member oversight into a CEO-led club. And what's really interesting about Dave's story at Greystone is that it represents what many industry experts believe is the future of club management. It's a case study of what happens when you empower a professional leader to actually lead. When you remove the bureaucracy of committee approvals for every decision, when you let your CEO focus on strategic growth instead of navigating political waters with board members who might have their own agendas. But it isn't just about making the GM's job easier. It's actually becoming about club survival. And in today's competitive landscape, clubs have got to be able to make quick decisions. They have to adapt to changing member expectations, which is huge, and they have to operate efficiently. And they can't do that when every decision has to go through 3 committees, 2 board meetings, and all sorts of other internal approvals. And granted, not every general manager in his or her role today may be capable of running a business like this. And they may be better suited, truthfully, as a day-to-day club manager. But for the clubs that want to take the next step, to build a team for the long haul, you may find this interview with Dave Porter to be helpful. Dave, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Ed. Super excited to be with you.
Yeah, and so we actually had a conversation during the pandemic, I think, and it was really interesting because we were talking about all the stuff that you guys were doing at Greystone, and now that's like a million years ago, it seems like, you know?
Yeah, it's amazing how much of that stuff is still in place because they loved it.
Yeah, I was just going to ask,
a lot of clubs experience that too.
As a follow-up to that, like, did you end up keeping a lot of that? It sounds like you did. Like, I mean, you guys were so innovative with the things you were doing for your members.
You know, what's funny is the most popular thing that we still keep doing is sunset cruises. So when one of the courses is closed, like once a month, we'll let people sign up, make a reservation, and we'll give them a golf cart. And they can just go ride the course while it's closed. And we'll have a bar set up at the bag drop, and everybody gets a complimentary free drink. And we'll have the beverage cart person out there, little mini charcuterie boards that they can take out there and purchase from us. So it's become a tradition that they don't want to let go. So.
Yeah, that is so cool. Well, I mean, talking about some changes in club operations, you recently at Greystone went through a change in some operations. And I should probably let you explain what was done and where you are today versus where you were maybe just a few years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way, I guess, taking it back from the beginning when I got hired, I mean, I've been doing this a long time. I know what works for me. Doesn't mean I'm right um, as far as for the industry, but hopefully this will resonate with a lot of people that listen. And I look at it like there's so many incredible managers out there that maybe like the governance the way it is when it's committee driven, and they like that support or that deep involvement or collaboration. That's okay, and I'm sure they're super successful. But those that like to have a little more autonomy, and what I call more of a current day leaning toward the CEO model of clubs. It started out when I got hired. The number one thing I asked for was only one thing, was to get it headed in the right direction. In my mind, was we needed to change the bylaws where the board was kind of took a step back with committees, and the committees would then report to me. Um, they'd be advisory to me and not to the board. And then none of the board members would be committee chairs. And so in the beginning, what we did is I had a board member that was a liaison to each committee, but it was a member at large. And then we changed the selection process. So people would actually fill out an application to join a committee, and they put their 1 through 3, as far as top three choices, and you're guaranteed to at least get your top three. I mean, at least your third choice at the worst. So everyone that volunteered got an opportunity to be on a committee. We'd go up to about 12 to 14 strong, which is a little bit much in my mind, but we wanted to keep everybody involved and make it more of a democratic process. So
Let's start with this. How many years have you been at Greystone?
this April will be 10 years.
10 years. Wow. All right. So you were saying when you first took the job, it was with that belief that this is going to run a little bit differently, this adopting this more CEO type of role. What was the leadership's response to that in the interview process?
I think it's probably what got me the job, because they were not in a good situation. They had great leadership, great member leadership. They had great department heads. Previous GM did a great job. It was just he was with the developer and then came in when it became member owned. Probably put him in a tough situation. Um, but he had a lot of really great strengths and did a great job. But it was kind of like I was the right guy for the job at the time. They're in kind of dire straits because they're only like 5 years out of being transitioned to a member owned club. So my whole point was, you want to be the greatest club, want to become a platinum club, well, you got to give me the autonomy. I can't just be going and asking for permission to go buy something for 5,000, or I can't ask permission to start changing the way we do things. I need to just keep it rolling. I'll keep you abreast. I'm not going to keep you in the dark, but I got to be able to keep rolling. I can't have too many checkpoints. And
And
they agreed. They're like, we got to do that. That worked out really well for several years. And then what I would do is I'd slowly try to reduce the amount of committees, because I knew this is a long process. You come in with the hammer and you're not going to get a warm reception. So that started out good, and the most important part for me there is that, so when they're advisory to management and the board members a liaison, so the board members hearing things, but the staff, that's my biggest concern. I don't want the staff to think they have two bosses. So they're taking direction from the board member or the committee chair, and then it's coming from me. Who am I supposed to listen to? Because I'd say probably still today, I'd have to take a stab at it, that 75% of the clubs, there's the Greens chairman's going down to the superintendent's office and seeing them, and those kind of things that would never ever happen here. That
go
was
ahead.
kind of
Go
step
ahead.
one. So step one got done, and then step two was start to reduce the amount of committees. We had 12 when I got here. Um, so then we went from 12 down to, I think it was 9 or 8, something like that. So what I did was greens and grounds and golf became one committee. And then we took tennis committee, we took pool committee, and we took fitness committee, and we made them one, and we called them swim, tennis, fitness. And then we had our dining and social membership committee, and then we just kept going. And as we worked with you guys and have had such success with growing the membership, we were able to eliminate the membership committee. The phase after that was now removing the board members as liaisons and just trusting me after I'd earned their trust that I'm going to report everything that comes out of committee. Because now it takes the committee. What was happening is they're looking at me and respecting me that I'm going to take their input and their collaboration, but they would always tend to look at the board member and be like, "You're going to get this done for me, right? Even if it's an operational issue. This could be about adding mac and cheese to the menu," and that was their advice or their suggestion, and they're looking at them. So um, finally they agreed. The board's like, "I get it," so they came out. So there was never, I always joke around saying if the governance isn't right, you should have a sign on your door instead of your nameplate. It should just be like, "Who's running this place anyway?" Question mark. Because nobody's really
Exactly.
sure. Yeah, you're in that title,
Right.
but the board, the committees. So we had it real crystal clear from the beginning, and it just kept evolving.
And yet, for so many clubs, there's a lot of trust that has to be built and developed in that role, especially if, a lot of traditional clubs that haven't operated that way, where the members are the
Right.
boss and, right? It's not easy to let go of that. How did you, in your mind, when you took over that role, how did you map out how you would build that trust and slowly make that
Yeah, it's
change?
it's a tough one. I mean, my process is always get everybody to buy in as fast as you can, whether it's the staff or the members, because very well from being a member of a club that the staff talks to the members about, "Oh, what do you think of the new guy and how's he and what's he like?" And so got to get the staff to buy into the culture changes and what we're doing. That's a good step forward because the staff's happy, then the members are like, "All right, this is good." And then results. So you start with, I did member focus groups to try to understand what they weren't happy with at the club, try to tackle some of those things early so I could build some momentum, some trust. But I also walked in at a strange time where we're in the middle of several $1 million worth of construction, and I also had to convince them to let me run that, um, and try to pull back on some of the things that they had already decided because maybe they weren't the right operational ideas as far as when we're done with it, the way we're going to function. So
Mhm.
it was a lot to take in, and I'm really blessed that they let me do what I wanted to do.
And that's eh, and you can kind of take what you're saying. And it sounds easy, but you're talking about members that in many cases have been very successful in their work and may not, be able to trust someone that's new,
Right.
let alone, like a totally different way of operating the club. Did you have in your mind, like, I hear what you're saying about, just like gradually, um, you know, inserting yourself in this, but did you try to like, I don't know, I think it's so interesting for some people who like say the construction and the, the responsibilities of that to say, I could just see a lot of members going, Dave, this is actually our thing.
Right.
I mean, it's like, and how do you infiltrate yourself into that where people really look at you and go, man, Dave knows his stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, they definitely didn't 100% think that at first. That's for sure because I had to make a lot of operational changes, personnel changes, and you know how that goes. If you say you hire a new chef, it's not like day one and everything's stellar. I mean, with any new manager, it's going to be 3 to 6 months before you start seeing massive results. So while you're encountering all those things, a lot of it, I have to be honest, is just begging for patience and saying,
Yeah.
trust me, this is going to be good in the end. And I think it was just, my references, my track record, they just kind of blindly just let me go because we were in a tough spot. I mean, they were getting assessed by $500,000 a year for about 5 straight years, because the developer was filling that gap all those years and
Mhm.
the dues were just artificially too low. So, those are the unpopular decisions that I had to request. I mean, I don't get to make those decisions, but raising dues, um, raising capital dues, or
Mhm.
getting engaged with companies like Club Benchmarking, and getting data in front of them. So when I had support from outside folks, I mean, with Ray Cronin and Club Benchmarking, it's so much better to they hear it from him, and then they're like, oh, that's what Dave's been telling us for the last 2 years. Yeah, we do need
Right.
to
That
increase our
outside
capital fee.
perspective. Yeah. So you had, in fairness, you had the reputation and the references that supported the vision and direction that you wanted to go to move into.
Yeah, it's I mean, I was blessed with that because the last club I was at, we ran under that same governance model. So that's why I was making the requests I did. I just learned that was over time of being in that environment. This is like a really good style for me because it's not that I want to be autocratic or I want full autonomy. I want them to set the guardrails. I want to collaborate, but I don't want to collaborate on, minutia or operating issues. If I need help or advice, I'll raise my hand. I'm not scared of that, but I have resident experts here in every topic in my team, and plus the thousands of managers out there that I can reach out to. So I don't think that guidance from a member that isn't in this business is kind of a weird thing. The key is you have
Right.
to be listening, and listening to the members and hearing them. And I'm not a person that doesn't, because what everything with our governance would make everyone think that I'm super against member feedback or input. It's not that way. I just rather do it in different ways. Like, so for example, I'll do happy hour with Dave once a month, and members come in for an hour. I'll do like 20-minute presentation on just hot topics that are happening at the club, and then they can open up, have a little town hall. Usually get 20 people, 30 people, and I'll buy them drinks. But make myself accessible in formal ways and informal. It's not just walking around the club and interacting. That's a given. But it's actually having a set time where they know, hey, I can come talk to Dave, or I'll just do a massive focus group out of the blue and invite some of my team members, and then do another one where I invite different team members. We always want feedback, but I think like surveys are so dangerous to me. I like the one hit surveys, like, people that dined with you or after a tournament, things like that. But when you do a overall survey, unless you're doing a master plan for the club,
Hmm.
there's an expectation you're going to do something.
Right.
And
Right. Don't ask me unless you plan on
yeah, and
doing something.
if you sift through 20 pages of analytical comments, oh my gosh, how can you combine all that? And, five of them are saying fire that person, fire this person, the service is this or that, and then 20 people are saying how great it is. It's my favorite thing, and it's just not. That's just my 2 cents on that.
Yeah. So I want to just touch on the culture part of it because we started the conversation many ways around dysfunction and how dysfunctional so many clubs can be. And who at Greystone, who sets? How does that work? Who sets the vision for the club, and who's responsible for the culture between your role and the board? Like, if you think of it like an
Yeah,
org chart, how does that actually work?
I mean, I lead up, and they rely on that. They actually like it, and then they provide feedback to what I'm proposing, and we massage it together versus them telling me what to do, or that me telling them this is what we're going to do. But they want to be presented with it. They have full-time jobs, and they like that they actually get to enjoy the club. And I'd say the average, outside of the president, the average board member probably spends about 4 hours, 3 hours a month max.
Hmm.
um, and then
Interesting.
the president probably maybe 6 to 7 hours a month. And this isn't including your golf buddies giving you a hard time about stuff. But
Yeah. Yeah.
formally, there's no one on the board spending more than 4 hours, except for
Wow.
the president's
Interesting.
maybe up
So
to six, and it's just because he has a couple other meetings.
So when you say you're leading up, you've got ideas or you're seeing things that, on an operational level, or an idea comes to you and you say, "Hey, I'm going to go to the board and talk to them about this idea, this
Yeah.
change." And they chime in and together you sort of, as you said, massage that idea. And then I'm assuming you leave with a unified vision and direction for where the club will
Yeah.
go. And you're ultimately executing on that. Is that
No,
kinda how
you
it
nailed
works?
it. That's exactly right. Except for, I mean, I'm blessed. After 10 years now, it's like there's a lot of things I don't even go to them for. And, within my spending authority, if I wanted to add a new service, for example, or do something, I'll tell them obviously. And if their eyes go I don't think that's a good idea, then I'm not stupid. But most of the time, they know what I'm doing is in sync in the best interest of the club, and they know that we want to be the most innovative and creative club. So some of the outlandish ideas that I have and we do, they're fine with it and excited. They want tradition and a good professional culture at the same time. So I don't get. I mean, I know my boundaries now, um,
Hmm.
and I always have. I mean, I've worked at some very um, traditional high end clubs, so I understand the balance. But it's finally
Hmm.
at that point where I can just go for it for the most part. But yes, you're absolutely right. When we're going to start talking about rule changes, culture changes, strategic planning, master planning, golf course renovations, for sure, I wouldn't just surprise them with that. If we're going to go replace bridges and car paths that are deteriorated, we're going to do things like that. We're gonna tell them. You know, we're gonna talk about it before we go um, do any projects on the golf course. Um, you know, there's no committee now, so we're not gonna just blindly go do it. But you know, and if it's big enough, you know, like once a year, I'll have my superintendent come into the room and we'll do a presentation on, hey, here's 6 things this year we want to do to improve the golf course that we think these 3 we can do in house, these 2 or 3 we probably gonna need to sub out, and here's the cost of them, and here's where they're gonna fit in the capital budget. Um,
Right.
and that works out
How
good.
does it work though, Dave, if you've got someone on the board or people in club leadership or in your leadership, which is I guess your board. Anyway, how do you handle it when a board member has a wacky idea? I heard someone told me what we should do. Like, I mean, that. How does that work in your environment today?
If it's really that outlandish, and I've either tried it or I know it's not going to work, and I can provide real explanation on it, then I'll just deny it right there and in a polite, professional way, but give some facts behind it. If not, I'll say, hey, let me look into it. I'll get back to you the next board meeting, and I'll bring it up to everybody, and I'll put it on my agenda and look into it. Just because if I don't do that, then how about all the ideas I have? You know, like
Exactly. Right. That's what I was wondering. Right. Is it easier in some ways for a club like Greystone to make this change? That's, in the scheme of private clubs, it's a fairly young club, right? I mean, it's not like hundreds of years old or 100 years old, whatever that is. How do you think that impacts the ability to make the change that you've made there?
that's a great point, because that's exactly why. I mean, it's probably at least half of the reason why we didn't have enough steeped tradition, and processes and ways of doing things set in stone that it was hard to overturn. I mean, the person at the 100-year-old club's going to listen to this and be like, oh, I'm never going to be able to get there. And it might take a lot longer. You might never get all the way there, but you start making changes.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
I mean, committee is everything to me of where you need to change, because the confusion with the staff is what needs to stop.
Hmm.
Where the superintendent of the golf course does not need a member that's the chair of a committee coming down to their office once a week and telling them you can't take that tree, or just sitting in their office and ask them, hey, what's going on? Same thing with the chef and the house committee, or keep going down the line. And the members actually getting to the point of picking out tournament gifts for member guests and stuff like that. I know it's happening in half the clubs in America, and people feel like they're throwing them a bone. But no, why do those 2 or 3 members pick out tea gifts for 200 and, well, in our case, 256 players? So I just think that that's where it needs to start for all these, historical clubs, because we're teenagers like you know, we're pointing at. That's the way I look at it. We're 30. We're going to be 34 this year. We're teenagers. We're only been member owned since '09, so we're
Hmm.
really teenagers, and that's why we're getting to our first ever wait list, and that's a hard thing to get to when you're inside a gated community and it's not mandatory membership. So with all those things, the person that's listening in the 100-year-old club, tackle the fact that the committees report or advisory to you, and they don't the chair does not get communicate directly. The chairs are not appointed; they're chosen by the GM. And start there. If you can get that, oh my gosh, life will change. The board members are either out or they're liaisons only. That'll
Hmm.
change everything.
Wait, so you're saying, I just want to double back on that because, and to make sure I'm clear on that. So for the 100-year-old club, you're saying get rid of, like, move towards getting rid of the committees, or is it a reporting thing? Like, what's the
Oh, I'm
first
sorry. I
step
just meant the reporting mechanism.
okay.
Yeah, they're not going to be
So,
able to get rid of the committees or probably even reduce them. But if you can change the reporting mechanism where committees are not advisory to the board and they don't make policy decisions or programming decisions, they provide feedback and they're advisory. But if they're advisory to management, so the GM and the department heads for that committee, and the person who's the chair of the committee is one of the people that volunteered, so we put them in terms, 2-year terms, and 3 on, 3. There's a series of people coming on and off. So I'll take somebody that's in their second year and make them a chairperson, and you're
mhm,
1 year, you're a chairperson. That's it. So it's not the board members picking their best friend or somebody that's been the chair for 20 years of the Greens Committee. But I get that approved by the board. So here's the people. Here's a sheet of everybody in their terms. Mr. So and so was on it last year, um, and there's some people that re-up. So they've been on it for 3 years and they haven't been chair yet. But now I think that person should be chair. They'd be a great leader. Um, and you put them in. So you put that list together at the beginning of the year and give it to the board, and they approve it or disapprove it. They've always approved it from me, but
mhm.
that way, there's no personal agenda. Somebody's just actually done the work. They're getting the chance to lead, and then you collaborate with that person as the GM
Mhm.
and the department head.
Mhm.
So we would do a little, when I used to have committees, we'd do a little pre-meeting where it would be myself and, say, the golf pro and the superintendent would meet with the chair of golf, the golf committee, because golf was golf and greens and grounds. So we'd meet with
Mhm.
them for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, like the week before. By the time we were done, we were ended up just doing it on Zoom or something, or just a phone call, or we'd
So I
present
get
him with
that.
the agenda and just go with it. But to get out of the gate and make that change is so key.
Yeah, that is exactly, like, so that helps clarify so much, because so often when at a club, when someone gets to the chair level, they say, "This is what we want to do.
Right,
We want to get money for this, or we want to make this change at the club," or and it goes up the food chain. Instead, what I'm hearing you saying is that committee actually, in the beginning, if you're early in making this change, the committee is actually kind of like the focus group that evolved
right,
into,
yeah,
down the
absolutely,
road, where they're saying, "Hey, this is what we see. This is what we think. These are observations." And they kick it up to the board, or to leadership
right,
that says, "Hey, this came out of that committee." And it seems like such an easy thing just to flip.
yeah, and
But
and
is it easy? Am I
it is
like,
easy. It's just an acceptance by the
yeah.
members, and be able to be open minded enough to see it, because what happens is it's actually better for the members in the end, because when we have all that dialogue at the actual committee level, when I had 6 committees and we had made half the transformation, what would happen, which was very positive, is you if it's an operational suggestion, we can make it happen right away. We don't need the board to have a board meeting to get
Mhm.
there. And then if it is something that needs to go to the board, then I would take it. And so I'm not going to not follow through with something that the committee is recommending or suggesting. Um, I'll bring all the pros and cons if I need another meeting. So, for example, if it's something that's capital nature, I'll look into it. I'll get pricing. I'll come back to the committee and say, "Hey, I looked into this. I researched it. Good idea. This is why it'll work or why it won't. And here are some of our obstacles." But I'll bring it to the board, and then, or maybe it's not going to work because we don't have enough land for that capital piece, whatever it might be.
Right.
Bring it to the board. All right, sounds good. Let's put it into the 5-year capital plan. Or no, that's I don't we don't want that at all, or whatever it might be. So
Mhm.
that's how it was developing, is that there was like a split here. If it's big enough to go to the board or part of their responsibilities, I'll take it. If it's not, we can just deal with it. This challenging part is, if so, for example, the director of rackets and I don't agree with what they're suggesting and just don't think it's a good idea, is you got to deliver that news back and not be like arrogant about it and autocratic. It's a tough
R
delivery that your idea is just
right.
not going to work here.
Well, yeah, so that becomes more of a leadership
Yeah,
type thing anyway,
absolutely.
and communication, how you
Right.
handle that. So, just so I get the mechanics right, what have done then is the committee chair takes the feedback perspective from that committee. They report to they share that with their liaison, who then takes it to the board. Is that
No, no,
how you work?
well, that's the first step is they would, they would. You're correct. If as an older club starting to transition,
Hmm.
the GM and that liaison need to have a good working relationship, and so it's kind of like, hey, Dave, put it on the agenda for this month. I'll bring that up under my report.
Right.
That liaison. Well, if you can get to the point of having no liaison, then it's just on the GM. So it was all
Got it.
those phases that I talked about in the beginning. When you finally
Right.
get to the phase where you might be you whether you reduce the committees or not, if you can get the board members completely off the committees and they're truly advisory to management and a chair is somebody from at large, then everything's on the GM to bring forward. You just have to build that trust where they know you are going to bring it to the board and report back to them what happened. And they're going to
Right.
see that board members around be like, hey, did Dave bring that up? So you're not going to not bring it up.
Right.
You know,
That is such and I can see how pivotal that one move
it is
can be,
because
just reversing that.
I'll give you one silly little example is like I could see it now when we used to have a rackets committee or even the grouped swim tennis fitness committee. There'd be
Mhm.
somebody talking about a couple ladies talking about the need to improve our food for the tennis matches because ours isn't as good as two or three other clubs. Can you imagine that going to the board?
Oh
Like
my gosh.
the
No.
board's
No.
talking about that. So in this case, board liaison's not in the room because we had evolved our governance at that point, and we're like, "Oh, really? I'm so sorry. I didn't know that you all felt this way. Let me uh, let me get with the chef. Let's get a few of you together and try to realize what you want to have, and we'll make the change. No big deal." So then my
Right.
director of rackets gets the chef, gets three ladies. They meet off to the side. They work out the menus they really want. He improves it. Everybody's happy, but the board didn't even know about it. And not that I'm trying to keep it from them, but why do they want to know about
Yeah, right. To get into the minutia and they're totally distracted.
it? Right.
Um, so gosh, there's so many things I'm trying to think of the next best question, but how have your board meetings changed? Like, do you change like how things have you changed from 2014 or 20, when you first started to board meetings now? What's been the most significant change
Um, we get
operationally?
we're more strategic now. We always save time for strategic discussion. We're still never more than an hour and a half, um, and it's just a lot more productive. But it also goes to other things along the way. Like I talked about club benchmarking is, every year we'll either it's on Zoom or in person. We'll have, we're very blessed to have had Ray do it himself, but so that as new board members come on and finance committee, we'll just put them all in one room. But to hear how clubs operate, not just from me, as far as from a financial standpoint, get you out of the weeds of, oh my God, why does a restaurant lose money, or why aren't we pricing this at that, or why aren't we more efficient with labor? And because people see people standing around at the bag drop, or there's too many servers when they happen to walk in the dining room. But then when you do a global thing, and we're only at the 50% mark for all clubs on labor versus total gross revenue, they're like, oh, all right, good job. So
Yeah.
it,
Interesting. I mean,
I think
there's a
once you
reason
get
why I
that,
can
I'm sorry, go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, you go ahead.
I think
Once you
once you
get
get
that.
that piece, the other piece goes a lot easier to have more time. And then once you've evolved the governance, because right now I have a finance committee, and that's actually by bylaws chaired by the president,
Hmm.
and the vice president is on that committee, and then there's 8 members at large,
Hmm.
and they volunteer for it. They have to be regular equity members, and so we have that committee. And so when I'm reporting on the financials, my president and vice president have already been through it with the finance committee. And then the steering committee, we assign one board member to every meeting. So there's at least one of them that has to be there. And then this was my decision. I mean, my idea and a backstop so that I'm not trying to totally keep them out, and any board member can come. So sometimes I'll have 3 or 4 board members will come to steering committee just because they want to see what it's all about and check it out. And we pop them on one of those subcommittees and they listen. because I've got it to the point where that doesn't make me feel insecure, like that they're
Hmm.
showing up. But if that was like my first year here, I'd be like, why are they
Yeah,
checking on
right.
me? You know?
Right. Yeah. The so now this has been going for a while for you, or at least the evolution, and everyone I'm assuming is very aware of the change and what's happening. I guess probably for a lot of members it's just how it's always worked now, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
like,
I mean,
yeah,
literally 450 of our 1,100 members have come in since COVID. So
gosh, that's crazy, right? I mean, so given that, the kind of the culture of leadership, the operational part of it is understood and how it works. I mean, does that make it easier um to make sure you're bringing on the right people as board members? And are the board members still elected by the membership, or how does that work?
we have a nominating committee that we go with. We do have a slate, so it's not a true ballot, but people can run from the floor if they want to get
Hmm.
petition signed, if they thought the board wasn't doing a good job or there was something wrong. But they've done a really good job by picking people from different aspects. So a lot of people they're either coming on through the finance committee, or they've been very involved in the committee when we did have all the committees. They were involved back then. They've stayed in tune. But you just know, I mean, after all these years here, I mean, we're only looking for two a year. Um,
Wow.
and to be president, you have to have already been on the board. So you're reaching back to a small group there to come on. So it's pretty easy to target who you want, and you have to be a regular member. We only have equity members, so we only have 500 of those. So it's you start whittling it down pretty easy. I mean, I see two people on our finance committee right now because that's a 3-year term,
Okay.
and
The
those are.
finance committee is a 3-year term.
Yes, sir. So
Okay, got it.
that kind of shows you who's involved, because that committee meets monthly, so the,
Yeah.
they're usually a good target, but it doesn't have to be that.
Yeah.
But since you're only looking for two, you know who's been involved and who's really supportive of the direction of the club.
So what is your leadership structure then?
Well, you got the members ultimately at the top,
Yeah.
because of it's still a member-owned club and they still vote anything that's going to be significant.
Yeah.
And then after that, we have those trustees that are kind of like they're actually a dotted line off of the board, but they're a backstop. We got the board of directors, and then me, and we have the one committee is kind of like the finance committee is kind of like off of the board, really.
Mhm.
They're not advisory to me. I mean, they are in form, but in the bylaws are advisory to the board. And then the steering committee is under me, and then I go all my department heads. I have 12 direct reports. So even though we're a big club, dollar volume, we're at 16 million. Not the most massive that way, but you're also in Birmingham, Alabama. So somebody that's sitting in New York and they're $25 million club, we're probably about equal. um,
Yeah.
but it's
Right.
two campuses and everything that goes with it.
So many clubs struggle with culture within the team, even the staff, department heads, and things like that. And one of the things that you'll hear clubs talk about quite a bit is that, you know, the if the staff is setting culture with the membership,
Right,
the member is going to have, it's sort of like it's all one and the same. Lousy staff culture will impact the culture of the members as well.
right.
How much more control, for lack of a better term, or how much more are you able to sort of facilitate that culture with this, rather than having, department chairs, or I'm sorry, committee chairs that are going to sit in the superintendent's office and getting into the operations? How much more are you able to sort of direct culture?
So much more, because what happens is, because I lived in the other environment, so that's why I can say for real how it works is, if you have a great relationship with, let's just keep using the superintendent as an example, then it works okay. It's fine. They believe in what you're trying to do. They understand your role. But if they think, it really doesn't matter what Dave does or thinks, because Mr. Smith is the guy and he
Hmm.
loves me and he's going to make sure I get the new contract, and all this pop and circumstance that Dave's doing and trying to build our team and synergy and all this excitement, it doesn't really matter to me. I'll go along with as much as I can, but I don't care. That's where it gets a killer right there is,
Mhm.
when you know that your boss is truly your boss, then you can get excited about it. Um,
Mhm.
you can believe in it a little bit better. So what's
Right.
happened here is when for example, we do an event, synergy is everything to me. So we do an event called Wimbledon on the green. So we take I'm not, other clubs probably do this and that's great, but it wouldn't happen if you don't have the right synergy and the right culture. Is that our superintendents are working for 3 weeks to take a piece of the driving range, and create it into a grass tennis court.
Mhm.
Um, so that we can do an event out there with grass tennis court and have an exhibition with let members play on it for a week, have an exhibition with other pros in the area. This year we're actually working on getting the Bryan brothers to come in and do it and pay them. So you can't do that stuff if you don't have the right culture, because this superintendent's going to be like, can you believe this stuff, Mr. Smith? This is BS. I don't want to do this. And then Mr. Smith's going to go to the board and talk to them, and then they're going to come tell me he's not doing that. Let's kill that event. And
Right. It automatically creates a subculture.
right,
It's like the club leader has, or the GM has a vision of and trying to do one thing, and then they're like little fiefdoms
right.
all over the club, which is so
I
counterproductive.
mean, that's the number one reason why we've been successful is that I have the ability to set the culture with the staff.
Hmm.
And then that sets the culture with the members to an extent. It's up
Right.
to the members themselves and the
Absolutely.
board at a certain point.
Right. I mean, there's so many issues where you have members talking to the staff a certain way, or just a lack of respect sometimes, and things that are allowed at clubs that, that I think are sort of part of that whole, culture issue. Not all general managers or people who have been hired as general managers, or who even aspire to be general managers, are able to lead in this way. What are the things, I want to ask this in two ways. What are the things a general manager should ask himself or herself, before trying to take on something like this, before saying, hey, I want to be in this role? Because it's not easy. There are a lot of different
Right,
skills that um, you know need to be addressed, or I guess skills that you must have
right.
to do this. So let's start with that. Like, what should a general manager really ask themselves if they're listening to this going, dang, I wish we could do that?
I think it's a great question. I mean, because everybody, I think about it a lot that they have skills I don't have, in the sense that, yes, I could work in a committee driven club. Heck, when I was coming out of college and I worked at a club in Philadelphia, we had an entertainment committee and we would watch VHS tapes about bands, and the committee would pick the bands they wanted. So I get it. I've been there, but they have to ask themselves, I think, to start, what's comfortable for them. What part of the business do they love, and where are they willing to put their own risk factor? Because I've taken on an enormous amount of job security risk,
Hmm.
because it's all on me if it goes wrong. Versus
Hmm.
when you have a lot of committees, you have a backstop. And I'm not saying that means someone's scared or they're not have enough guts. I'm just saying sometimes it's more comfortable. You have a
Hmm.
family, you have livelihood, you enjoy the business, you enjoy the environment, and you've been there a while or whatever it might be. And maybe you just want to get a little bit, you don't want to go all the way that I went. So that's where maybe you just want to start with getting the committees to be advisory to management.
Sometimes I wonder, if the you know, clubs will put a certain GM in to fit how they operate. But if a club is really serious about changing and saying, man, we got to make this
Yeah.
change, um, and they look at their general manager, what do you think are the things that the club leadership should look at? What are the qualities they should look for in their general manager, or in a future general manager, if they want to go in this direction?
That's an awesome question because before I came to Greystone, I sat at the table several times in those interviews, and they say they want to change, but then when you start pressing them a little bit, and you can't change overnight. It's just not going to be successful because there's going to be an uproar to the membership, or that it's just going to fall flat. So you have to be able to take it one step at a time. But it's like that A Few Good Men movie with Jack Nicholson. You can't handle the truth.
Right.
You,
Yeah. Yeah.
you want me on that wall. You need me on that wall.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
just, I think it's just trying to convince them that the leadership qualities that you need in that person are somebody, when you start doing those tests on people's leadership abilities, is you need somebody that's just going to have insane amount of fortitude, positive outlook and innovation, um, and just a real inclusive, collaborative behavior. Because if somebody's autocratic and they just do it my way is the highway, it's like you want that personality of somebody that's that driven, but you don't want
Hmm.
that because then it's just theirs. Like mine's still collaborative. It might
Hmm.
everything somebody might have listened to this and felt like it doesn't seem that it is collaborative because of all the happy hours with Dave and the big steering committee and the focus groups that we do periodically, and then the ability to make sure you're in the right place at the right time to talk to members and get feedback. So
Right.
I think the boards need to just be ready, though. They need to be able to at least take one step forward to release the committee. It's really all about the committees to start, and then it's about the board's belief to let somebody lead.
Yep.
Like
Gotcha.
if you after 10 years you don't have them printing fake money that says "In Dave we trust" or "In your name we trust," then we got there's probably a problem. You know,
Yeah.
like, I mean, do they
Interesting.
look at you at the board meeting? So the board needs to self-reflect too, is my point. Like, not only when they hire, but when they're leading that new GM or the current GM is, are you giving them the tools and are you supporting them? Or are you trying to look to shut them down every time? Because then maybe you're just that GM's in an unhealthy situation.
Right. That's helpful. I just want to bring this together with a couple things. One is, this is about, in many ways, growing your club,
Right,
and how impactful is it to have, I mean, I'm going to give you the softball. How important is it that you have great leadership structure, great culture when it comes to attracting new members?
right. I mean, it's so huge. I mean, I think when people come here and they feel the comfort of the club and that the way that the staff interacts with them, it's because we've been able to set the tone,
Hmm.
and the members understand their role too now. I mean, they understand because, like, when I came, I forced the staff. I know it's simple stuff and most clubs are doing it, but forced the staff to call everybody Mr. and Mrs. and Doctor. Because it wasn't that way before, it got so far that the members still to this day think I want to be called Mr. Porter. And I'm like, no, no, it doesn't work that way. You
Yeah.
don't need to do that to me. They're like, they thought that's what I wanted. And I'm like, no, I want you to be respected. And we're going to be friendly, but we're not going to be friends because it
Right.
blurs way too many lines. And that's very
Yeah.
hard for me after 10 years, especially working closely with board members and people I consider very dear friends, but I don't fraternize with them at all outside of the club because it's our policy. And that set the tone big time for us, is that we have a zero tolerance on that.
Yeah. Interesting.
They wear,
Um,
we wear name tags, they wear bag tags.
so I'll just give you my thing in my head, which is that great culture is going to be more important than ever in the future for private clubs.
Right.
Having sustainable business models is going to be more important than ever,
Yeah.
especially if the interest in private clubs dries up, or as we know, there's more competition for discretionary income,
Right.
especially among the target demographic that so many clubs are going after. And without type business operations, I don't know how clubs survive.
Right.
What is your what is your advice or what's your recommendation to clubs that maybe are feeling, the strain of um, dysfunction in their organization that shows up in all their operations and then ultimately the culture? How do they make that change? What do you
That's a great
recommend?
question because one of the things we all know is retention on the staff and the members is critical. So, starting with the staff, that's what really sets culture. As the staff is the experience as much as the amenities. And if you got a different bartender every month, or it's I know all the positions are super important, behind the scenes, sometimes more than the front. But those front facing people, with the members is part of the experience. So I'm really focused on retention. I mean, we went up from 3.2 this year to 3.8 average tenure. Next year, we're trying to go even further. It's never going to be perfect because of the industry we're in, but also the seasonality. But the culture becomes how great is it to work there?
Dave, this is so helpful. And I feel like I could go on and ask you a million more questions. And I really appreciate your
Yeah,
time
thank
and
you.
all the insight and perspective.
It's been fun talking about our club. Thank you for asking me everything.
And thank you for listening. If you find this podcast helpful, be sure to subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, keep crushing your club marketing.